I've been married to Mark for 7 years now. My name's Brittany, and I'm a cosmetologist with some medical training under my belt. But that's not enough for me. I want my own office, my own business. It's all I can think about most days. I work my ass off at 2 different clinics, pinching pennies wherever I can. It's exhausting, but it'll be worth it when I finally have enough saved up. Mark doesn't get it though. He's happy being an office clerk, never pushing for more. We came to an agreement early on, we both put in a set amount for bills and stuff, and the rest is ours to do what we want with. It works, I guess. At least we're not fighting about money. And the apartment helps, my dad gave it to us as a wedding gift. One less thing to worry about. Kids aren't on the cards right now. I know I couldn't handle a baby and my career goals. Mark says he's fine with waiting, that we've got plenty of time for that later. Sometimes I wonder if he really means it or if he's just saying what he thinks I want to hear. My family, well, that's complicated. Mom and Dad split when I was 5. I stayed with Dad while Mom went off to find herself or whatever. She remarried, had my half-sister Liz. We were never close, Liz and I. How could we be when Mom barely bothered with me? But then I got married, and suddenly Mom wanted to play happy families. She showed up at the wedding, all smiles and promises. "Brittany, darling," she'd said, hugging me tight. "I want us to be close again. Can we try?" I wanted to believe her. I really did. So we started talking more, meeting up for coffee when I could spare the time. But it didn't take long to see that nothing had really changed. Liz was still the golden child, the one Mom really cared about. It stings, you know? Watching your own mother fawn over your sister while you're treated like an afterthought. But I try not to let it get to me. I've got my own life, my own goals. I don't need their approval. Life has a funny way of piling on responsibilities when you least expect it. Take my sister for example. She's got 2 kids from guys I've never even met. She swears the fathers chip in financially, but Liz and Mom were always short on cash. "Brittany, honey," Mom would call, her voice sweet as syrup. "Could you spare $50? Just till payday." It was always something, groceries, bills, new shoes for the kids. And speaking of the kids, I became the go-to babysitter. "You should spend more time with your nephews," Liz would insist, dropping them off unannounced. "Buy them some toys. That's what good aunts do." Don't get me wrong, I love those little rugrats. When I actually had free time, which wasn't often, I'd have them over. Mark was great with them too, which always made me smile. Seeing him play with the boys, well, it made me wonder what kind of dad he'd be. One Saturday, I was elbow-deep in laundry when Liz burst in, kids in tow. "Emergency mani-pedi," she announced, already halfway out the door. "You don't mind, right?" Before I could answer, she was gone, leaving me with 2 hyper boys and a mountain of chores. "Looks like we've got company," Mark grinned, emerging from the bedroom. He scooped up the younger one, tickling him till he squealed. "What do you say we build a fort?" I watched them disappear into the living room, torn between gratitude for Mark's help and frustration at my sister's presumption. But the real kicker came a few weeks later. Mom and Liz decided they needed some pampering and booked appointments at my clinic for a series of skin rejuvenation procedures. I spent hours working on them, using our most expensive products and equipment. When it came time to settle up, they laughed. "Oh, Brittany," Mom chuckled, "you're not actually charging us, are you? We're family." I stood there, dumbfounded. "But, the products alone cost." "Come on, sis," Liz cut in. "It's not like it's coming out of your pocket." But it was. The cost of those products would come straight out of my paycheck. They left, all smiles and glowing skin, while I was left with a hefty bill and a sinking feeling in my stomach. That evening, as I was getting ready for my second shift, Mark found me staring at myself in the bathroom mirror. "You okay, Britt? You seem off." I wanted to tell him everything, about Mom and Liz, about feeling used, about the money I'd have to pay back to the clinic. But looking at his concerned face, I couldn't bring myself to dump my problems on him. Just tired, I lied, forcing a smile. Long day. He nodded, kissing my cheek. Don't work too hard, okay? As I left for work, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had to give. I was stretching myself thin for everyone else, my family, my job, my savings goal. When would I start putting myself first? As I started the treatment, I made a silent promise to myself. Things were going to change. I just didn't know how drastically, or how soon. Weeks turned into months, but nothing really changed. Liz kept showing up unannounced, kids in tow, always with some flimsy excuse. "Brittany, I've got an emergency mommy appointment," she'd say, already halfway out the door. "You don't mind watching the boys, right?" "Thanks, you're a lifesaver." And just like that, my rare day off would be hijacked. I'd try to protest, but Mark would always step in. "Come on, Britt," he'd say, scooping up one of the kids. "They're just kids. It's not their fault." I knew he was right, but it didn't make it any less frustrating. I'd watch him play with the boys, torn between gratitude for his help and resentment at my sister's presumption. Then, out of nowhere, my world turned upside down. Dad died. Just like that, the man who'd raised me, who'd been my rock through everything, was gone. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I threw myself into organizing the funeral, trying to keep busy so I wouldn't have to think about the gaping hole in my life. When I called Mom to invite her, her response was like a slap in the face. "I'm not going to my ex-husband's funeral, Brittany," she said, her voice cold. It wouldn't be appropriate. The funeral was a blur. I remember standing there, feeling lost, while people offered their condolences. Mark was by my side, his hand on my back, but I felt so alone. After everything was done, I had to deal with Dad's estate. He'd left me his house, a big, beautiful place full of childhood memories. I stood in the living room, looking at the familiar walls, and felt tears welling up. What was I supposed to do with this place? Selling it felt wrong, like I'd be selling a piece of Dad. But keeping it, the thought of rattling around in this big house with just Mark, or worse, trying to keep it clean, was overwhelming. After days of deliberation, I decided to rent it out, at least for a while. I found an agency, signed the papers, and tried to ignore the pang in my heart as I locked up Dad's house, my house now, I guess. A week later, I got a call from the agency. "Ms. Johnson, we've got a problem," the agent said, sounding nervous. "We can't get into the house. There are people inside. They won't let us in." I felt a flash of anger, cutting through my grief. Now, as I drive towards Dad's house, my hands grip the steering wheel so hard, my knuckles turn white. I'm running through what I'm going to say to these brazen invaders. How dare they? This is my father's house, my inheritance, my memories. I stood on the porch, my hand raised to knock, anger coursing through my veins. But nothing could have prepared me for what happened next. The door swung open, and there stood Mom and Liz, looking as if they owned the place. Behind them, I could hear the patter of little feet, my nephews, running around like they lived here. For a moment, I couldn't speak. I just stood there, mouth agape, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. "What the hell are you doing here?" Mom had the audacity to smile. "Oh, Brittany. We decided to move in. This place is perfect for the kids, don't you think?" I felt like I was in some kind of twisted dream. "Move in? What are you talking about? How did you even get in here?" Mom shrugged, like it was no big deal. "Oh, I just borrowed your keys when I was over at your place last week. I knew you wouldn't mind." "Wouldn't mind?" I sputtered. "I signed a contract with a rental agency. You can't just..." The door slammed in my face, leaving me standing there, shocked and furious. I pounded on the door again. "You can't do this," I shouted. "If you don't leave, I'll call the police." I heard laughter from inside. Mom's voice came through the door, mocking. "Oh, please. You wouldn't dare call the cops on your own mother and sister." That was it. The last straw. I pulled out my phone and dialed 911, my hands shaking with anger and disbelief. I gave them the address and explained the situation. The dispatcher assured me they'd send someone right away. It felt like hours, but it was probably only about 15 minutes before a police car pulled up. 2 officers got out, looking serious. The officers listened, then knocked on the door. When Mom answered, her smug expression faltered at the sight of the uniforms. "Ma'am," the officer said, "I'm going to have to ask you and anyone else who doesn't live here to leave the premises immediately. This is private property, and you're trespassing." Mom's face turned red. "This is ridiculous. Brittany, how could you?" The other officer turned to me. "Do you want to press charges?" I hesitated for a moment, then shook my head. "No, I just want them out." It took another 20 minutes of arguing and threats of arrest, but finally, Mom, Liz, and the kids came out. As they walked to their car, Mom turned to me, her eyes blazing with anger. "You've crossed a line, Brittany," she hissed. "You'll regret this. Mark my words." As I watched them drive away, I felt a mix of emotions: relief, anger, sadness, and a strange sense of liberation. For the first time in my life, I'd stood up to my family. I'd set a boundary and enforced it. I turned back to the house, my house now, and took a deep breath. The police officers gave me their card, told me to call if there was any more trouble, and left. It happened 2 days later. I dragged myself up the stairs to my apartment, exhausted after another double shift. All I wanted was a hot shower and some peace and quiet. But as soon as I opened the door, I knew something was terribly wrong. The place was a mess. Suitcases and boxes were piled in the hallway, and from the dining room came the sound of voices and laughter. I stepped into the room and froze. There, gathered around my dining table like it was Thanksgiving dinner, sat Mom, Liz, her kids, and Mark, my own husband, looking as comfortable as could be in this bizarre scenario. "What the hell is going on here?" I demanded, my fatigue instantly replaced by anger. Mom looked up, all innocence. "Oh, Brittany, we were wondering when you'd get home. We've decided to move in with you." Liz chimed in. "Well, since you kicked us out of your dad's house, we've got nowhere else to go. You wouldn't leave your family homeless, would you?" I turned to Mark, expecting support, but my heart sank as he spoke. "I told them it'd be fine, Britt," he said, shrugging. "Their family, after all." I was outnumbered, and God, I was so tired. The fight drained out of me as quickly as it had come. "We'll talk about this tomorrow," I muttered, heading for the bedroom. "I need sleep." But sleep, it turned out, was a luxury I could no longer afford. From that day on, my life became a waking nightmare. Our small apartment, once a cozy haven, turned into a chaotic war zone. There were people everywhere, sleeping on couches, sprawled across the floor, constantly underfoot. The noise was unbearable. The kids screamed and fought from dawn till dusk, their shrill voices piercing through any semblance of peace. I'd come home from work to find new disasters every day. One afternoon, I walked in to find my TV face down on the floor, its screen a spiderweb of cracks. "Oh, that," Mom said dismissively when I asked what happened. "The boys were just playing. You know how kids are." The next day, it was my antique vases, a wedding gift from Dad, in pieces on the coffee table. "They're exploring their world," Liz explained, not even bothering to look up from her phone. "It's part of growing up." But the destruction of my home was just the beginning. Somehow, I'd become the maid and cook for this entire circus. When I protested, they'd look at me like I was speaking a foreign language. "But you're the lady of the house," Mom would say, her voice syrupy sweet but her eyes hard as flint. "It's your job to take care of your guests." Even Mark, my own husband, piled on. "Come on, Britt, they're your family. We need to help them out." As the days turned into weeks, I felt like I was drowning. I'd come home from grueling shifts at the clinic only to face hours of cooking and cleaning. My dreams of opening my own business seemed to be slipping further away with each passing day. 3 weeks. 3 hellish weeks of chaos, noise, and mounting tension. Every day, I'd ask Mom and Liz when they planned to leave. "Oh, we haven't found a place yet," Mom would say, waving her hand dismissively. "These things take time, you know." Liz would chime in, "Yeah, sis. We can't just move into any old dump. We need somewhere nice for the kids." And every single time, Mark would back them up. "Their family, Brit. We can't just throw them out on the street." I felt like I was going crazy. My home, my sanctuary, had been invaded, and I couldn't seem to do anything about it. Then, one Tuesday, I got an unexpected reprieve. 2 clients canceled their appointments back to back, leaving me with a rare afternoon off. As I drove home, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe I could finally have some peace and quiet. I knew Mom had taken the kids on a short trip, and Liz was supposed to be meeting a friend. Even Mark should have been at work. For once, I'd have the place to myself. I opened the door quietly, already dreaming of a hot bath and maybe a nap. But as soon as I stepped inside, I knew something was wrong. There were sounds coming from the bedroom, our bedroom. My heart pounding, I crept down the hallway. The bedroom door was ajar, and what I saw through that crack shattered my world into a million pieces. Mark and Liz. In our bed. Together. I must have made a sound, because they suddenly sprang apart. Mark's face went pale when he saw me. "Brittany, it's not what it looks like." But Liz just laughed, a cruel, mocking sound that cut me to the bone. "Oh, please," she sneered. "It's exactly what it looks like. Mark and I have been in love for years." Mark nodded, his initial shock fading into a look of defiance. "It's true, Britt. Liz, she gets me. She's not always working, always obsessed with her career like you are." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Years? What do you mean, years?" Liz's smirk grew wider. "Oh, honey, those kids you've been babysitting? They're Mark's. We've been together since right after your wedding. He's been supporting us this whole time." The room spun around me. I felt like I might throw up. "Get out," I whispered, then louder, "Both of you, get out, now." But Mark just laughed. "Get out? Oh, Britt, you're the one who's leaving." He reached into the bedside table and pulled out a stack of papers. "I've had these divorce papers ready for months. This apartment? It'll be mine after we split everything up. You're the one who's out on the street, loser." He shoved the papers into my hands, and then, before I could react, he and Liz were pushing me towards the door. I was so shocked, so devastated, that I couldn't even fight back. "Have a nice life, sis," Liz taunted as Mark slammed the door in my face. I stood there in the hallway, clutching those divorce papers, my entire world crumbling around me. Everything I thought I knew, everything I'd worked for, it was all a lie. As the reality of what just happened began to sink in, I felt something inside me snap. The pain, the betrayal, it was all too much. But underneath it all, a new emotion was rising, rage. My hand shook as I dialed Mom's number. Surely, she'd be outraged. Surely, she'd take my side. But when I told her what happened, her response left me cold. "Oh, Brittany," she sighed, sounding more annoyed than sympathetic. "I've known about Mark and Liz for years. It's time you faced reality." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You knew and you didn't tell me?" "What good would it have done?" she asked. "Look, why don't you just give them the apartment? It's better for the children, you know." I hung up without another word, feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. My own mother. In a daze, I called the only person I could think of, Dad's lawyer, Mr. Thompson. He listened patiently as I poured out the whole sordid story. "Come to my office," he said when I'd finished. "There's something you need to know." An hour later, I sat across from Mr. Thompson, still reeling from the day's events. "Brittany," he began, "I know you're upset, but I have some good news. Your father was a smart man. He put both the house and your apartment solely in your name before you got married. Legally, Mark has no claim to any of it. As I left his office, I felt lighter, but still raw. I couldn't face going back to the apartment, not yet. Instead, I found myself driving to Dad's house, my house now. On impulse, I went to his study. Maybe going through some of his things would help me feel close to him again. As I rifled through the drawers of his desk, my hand brushed against an envelope. It was addressed to me, in Dad's handwriting. With trembling fingers, I opened it and began to read. My dearest Brittany. If you're reading this, it means I'm gone. I'm sorry I couldn't be there to help you through whatever challenges you're facing. But I want you to know how proud I am of you. You've always been a fighter, even when life knocked you down. I know how hard you've been working towards your dream of opening your own salon. I want you to have that dream. That's why I'm asking you to sell this house. Use the money to build your business, to build the life you want. I've always believed in you, Brittany. Now it's time for you to believe in yourself. All my love, Dad. I clutched the letter to my chest, tears streaming down my face. Even now, Dad was looking out for me, supporting me. As I sat there in his study, surrounded by his things, reading his words, something shifted inside me. The pain and betrayal were still there, but alongside them, I felt a new strength growing. Dad was right, I was a fighter. And it was time to start fighting for myself. I stood up, wiping away my tears. For the first time in years, I felt truly clear about what I needed to do. No more compromising. No more putting everyone else first. It was time to follow my heart, just like Dad said. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. I grabbed the divorce papers Mark had thrust at me and marched straight to the mayor's office. As I signed my name, I felt a weight lifting off my shoulders. This wasn't an end, it was a beginning. My next stop was my real estate agent friend, Sarah. I need to sell everything, I told her. The house, the apartment, all of it. Sarah's eyes widened, but to her credit, she didn't ask questions. She just nodded and got to work. The sales went through faster than I expected. Maybe the universe was finally on my side. With the money in hand, I didn't waste any time. I found a perfect space for my salon, a large, airy room with big windows and plenty of natural light. I poured every penny into top-of-the-line equipment, sleek decor, and all the licenses I needed. Then, I found myself a cozy little apartment just a few blocks from the salon. It wasn't big, but it was mine. All mine. I was so focused on my new life that I almost forgot about the old one. Until Sarah called me, chuckling. You should have seen their faces, Britt, she said. When the new tenants showed up, Mark and your family looked like they'd seen ghosts. They scrambled to pack up and get out. It was quite a sight. I allowed myself a small smile at that. Karma, it seemed, was real. Of course, Mom couldn't let it go. Her angry call came just a few hours later. How dare you, she screeched through the phone. After everything we've done for you. You ungrateful, selfish. I cut her off mid-rant. I'm done, Mom, with all of it. With you, with Liz, with this whole toxic mess. Don't call me again. And with that, I hung up and blocked their numbers. It felt like cutting off a diseased limb, painful, but necessary for survival. The next few months were a whirlwind. I threw myself into my work, pouring all my energy into making my salon the best in the city. And it paid off. Word spread quickly about the new place in town with the miracle-working beautician. Before I knew it, I was booked solid months in advance. I hired staff, expanded my services, even started looking into opening a second location. For the first time in my life, I was truly thriving. Sometimes, I'd hear gossip through the grapevine. Apparently, Mark, Liz, Mom, and the kids were all crammed into a tiny apartment across town. They fought constantly, their dream of an easy life at my expense shattered. But you know what? I didn't care. Their drama wasn't my problem anymore. One evening, as I locked up the salon after another successful day, I paused to look at my reflection in the window. The woman staring back at me was different from the one I'd been just a few months ago. She stood taller, smiled easier, her eyes bright with confidence and contentment. I thought about Dad's letter, tucked safely away in my new apartment. He'd told me to follow my heart, to trust myself. And I had. Against all odds, I'd done it. As I walked home through the twilight, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. Life wasn't perfect, it never is. But it was mine. My choices, my successes, my future.